Excellent. I am also now live. For everyone tuning in, welcome to LIGO night. Tonight we're going to talk about LIGO, the Laser Interferometer Gravitational Wave Observatory. And we're going to start with Alan's going to talk about analysis of their findings, done by Stephen Crothers and also others, I believe. And then we're going to go from that into the way that they do their analysis, which has evolved over time, but it currently uses what's called a convolutional neural network, which is a deep learning network that uses machine learning to find what they're looking for, essentially. And then we're going to talk about the wonderful way in which they had to account for curvature when they built the LIGO Laser Interferometer Gravitational Observatory, because when you're going long distances with straight laser beams, quote unquote, you're going to need to have your curvature accounted for. So we will go into detail about that at the end. But yeah, thanks for being here. And Alan, whenever you're ready, go ahead and kick it off.
Yep, give me 1 sec. Just adjusting OBS scenes because I have a video to play real quick. Or at the end of this, I have a video to play. So I'm just getting a couple of things prepared real quick.
Excellent. Take your time. Yeah, so they said they started finding gravitational waves back in around, when was it, 2017, I believe. And the first time they found one, it was right after they had kicked the whole system into maintenance mode. And it turned out after they celebrated it that it was not actually a gravitational wave. It was sampled data, and it was a test. And that made it so that later on, when they started, they claimed they detected them again, employees at LIGO were questioning what they had even detected because of what happened previously, which you can't blame them for being kind of skeptical because they had been, they felt like they had been duped before.
Absolutely. All right, we're about to begin here. So we're going to start off with the construction, the mainstream. Before we get into the analytics of it, of what it is that they claim that they're measuring, I'm going to go over the construction of this because they say that Earth's curvature can be found in the based off of how this place was constructed, right? So we're going to go over that in a second. If I could pull up the right thing to change slides. All right, there it is.
Are you sharing your screen on here?
Did you want to share? Or?
No. Yeah, I just got it all set up on OBS.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, we're good. Okay, so LIGO. Here we go. Okay, you guys see that?
Yep.
Awesome.
I don't know. I'm seeing curve. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So what they say here is that at the end of this arm, there's Earth curvature that has to be accounted for. Otherwise, the laser mirror would deflect. So they had to account for that somehow. So how do they do that? So we go to Google here. And we say, how was Earth's curvature accounted for in the construction of LIGO? And we get here from Caltech's LIGO lab. The precision concrete pouring upon the path which the beam tube is installed was required to counteract the curvature and ensures that the laser beam leaves the corner station traveling in a straight line as it strikes the test mass mirror at each arm and not a meter above it. So they're saying that there'll be like a deflection by a meter due to Earth's curvature due to this, and they had to pour the concrete in a special way to account for that. So I tried to track down some more intricate sources on that. Maybe because this is just off of their website, right? Like maybe there's, some building plans or something. I don't know. Maybe there's more stuff out there where we can get into the specifics of how they did it. No, it turns out that you just call your local construction company and you just ask them to account for the curvature. So that's not even a. How do we even substantiate that, right? So we'll get into that towards the end of the video or towards the end of this presentation here, because there's a nice little video where a gentleman has a LiDAR presentation that we'll watch and go over. But this is just covering that. So here's the stations here. Here's a Here's a top view of them, and they're saying that without pouring this concrete in a special way, this couldn't work. Couldn't work. All right, here's the other station in Kentucky, and here's one in Livingston, Louisiana. So here's the other one. So again, they're saying, because it's so long, they have to account for Earth curvature. Here's their website. Again, just kind of reiterating the same thing. Precision pouring concrete upon which the beam, blah, 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 right? And we get into this right here. This is the new installation that they added called Kagra. And it's in Japan. It's built in the side of a mountain. Now, when they talk about accounting for Earth curvature and all that, and the difficulties with that over the course of a mile, they're also trying to keep these devices have to be orientated in a specific way, right? So to keep this device leveled, it has to be perpendicular to its gravitational, or it has to be perpendicular with its gravitational relationship with the geoid. And when you're near a mountain, that's when you're at the most odds with that relationship. They make no mention of any difficulties or anything like that, like the the astronomical hurdles that they would have to overcome to figure out what exactly level is on the inside of a mountain.
Well, they'd have to do the proper deflection of the vertical to take the angle to show those measurements, and I don't see that listed anywhere, so I was curious.
No, and it would be something they would brag about, Shane, because what's the one thing they like to brag about when they deflect a vertical to take a measurement to be perpendicular with the gravitational potential of the geoid?
My God. Sorry, I can't get the whole accurate field man of what they're trying to say out without laughing.
Yeah. All right. Oops. Let's see here. Okay, so that's the end slide for that. So we're going to watch a video now on the LIDAR readings that supposedly back this Earth curvature claim up. And this is the substantiation for this specially poured concrete. So give me 1 second here while I change slides for the boys. And I got to change on here too. 1 second. Cool. All right, ready, lads? I'm gonna play this at 2 speed. Or 1x is fine. All right, here we go.
In the flat Earth sphere, the LIGO observatories are brought up on occasion as evidence the Earth is a globe. Their construction allegedly takes into account the curvature of the Earth. The observatories are essentially giant interferometers, where lasers are bounced along 2 perpendicular arms and an interference pattern potentially observed when they were joined. The arms of the observatory must be built perfectly straight. On the caltech.edu website, it states that LIGO's arms are long enough that the curvature of the Earth was a factor in their construction. Over the 4-kilometer length of each arm, the Earth curves away by nearly a meter. But can we actually confirm this? The USGS publishes LIDAR elevation data for the United States for anyone to download freely. I've downloaded tiles for the LIGO installations at Hanford and Livingston from the National Map website. Using a GIS-capable software, I imported the data. The color scheme is similar to a contour map in that each color represents a constant elevation. You can clearly see the LIGO facility in the elevation data, which has cuts through the hills and embankments in the low areas. Let's draw a few lines along the concrete foundation to plot an elevation profile. Plotting the elevation profiles shows that the foundations appear to curve upwards. Remember that these elevations are measured relative to sea level. This is what we expect with a straight line on a globe. If the Earth is flat, then LIGO's arms are actually bent upwards. If I calculate drop on a globe, you can see that the profiles match. This is independent confirmation that the LIGO observatories have indeed been constructed based on Earth's curvature, which anyone can do themselves for free. Personally, I would recommend using a free program called QGIS if you want to do this yourself. The as-built plans are also publicly available on the Caltech website, which I linked in the description. Their profile views appear to match the elevation data. Thanks for watching.
All right, and then it's just more of the same after that. So to recap there, you can independently verify the curvature that LIGO says they have to account for by referencing something that already presupposes what they need to confirm in the first place by taking deviations from measurements of the stars. So I'm confused as how that's a independent confirmation there.
It's almost like they forgot Google Earth was curved. They were like, haha, independently in the real world, I've proved that that facility is in fact curved.
Yeah, so that's it for LIGO's curvature, man. And now we'll get into what it is that they say that they're measuring.
It should definitely be noted that the only objection they have was to the building and not a word, hint, or whiff about the findings, the way they found it, with the detection method, the type of data, how they pulled data. That's all apparently, all our critiques on that are golden and valid because nobody's responded a word. But they did want to talk about the concrete, so we handled that.
All right. So we'll get into what it is that they say that they're measuring here. So they say that two black holes collided 11 billion years ago, and that there's a ripple in space-time, and that this interferometer that they have, that this interferometer network that they have set up is measuring a time difference, right? There's a ripple in time that's slightly changed and slightly slower than the I don't know how they explain it, but there's a ripple in time, right? And this is causing an interference pattern that they say that they're measuring. That's 1/1000th the width of a proton.
Are you sharing anything, Alan?
Nope, just
cool,
giving a quick explanation.
No, it's a fantastic explanation.
Yeah. So, let's see. So anyway, all this is derived off of solutions to Einstein's field equations in the form of metrics. So you'll have your Schwarzschild metric, you'll have your Kerr metric, et cetera, right? Now these metrics, these solutions, they have a certain breaking point where they're unable to describe the gravitational influences of space-time curvature, and it will collapse in on itself, essentially, right? And by collapse in on itself, one second. By collapse in on itself, that just means that it reaches a singularity, so like the math falls apart. So it's just not compatible at that scale to describe something that small with that much gravitational influence. So when it hits that threshold, they turn that into a story about a black hole. They say that, they started this mythology around, well, what if it has like an event horizon and anything that get light can't escape it, but if you're right next to it, you're getting sucked into it, you can still maybe get out if you go fast enough, but good luck. They have all these stories around it. We see a lot of it in pop culture. It's highly mythologized, and it comes out of these. So it's like, where does it come out of? Well, it comes out of these equations when they break down, when they actually don't work, and they just turned it into like a cool hip hop, or not hip hop, a cool pop culture thing, that they put in movies and use in different references for everything to influence you. So. Let's see here. So out of these equations here, they have there's certain rules for solving these equations and applying these and deriving these things, right? Like you can't just, I don't know. There's rules there's rules you have to follow, right? And one of the big rules that Einstein says is that all reference frames are equally valid, and there's no preferred reference frame, meaning there's no preferred coordinate systems or anything like that. So in this merger, this equivalence principle merges special and general relativity together, right? So flat space-time and curved space-time should be able to describe the same things under different metrics. All right, let's see, where are we at here? Okay, yeah, so the equivalence principle and all that. So with that in mind, and the all reference frames being equally valid, they derive the solutions for the predictions for gravitational waves out of a preferred coordinate system, and that's shown by Stephen Crothers's work in the mid-2000s. He goes through and shows that they have to specifically use flat space-time because the approximations that you would use to linearize the field equations to solve them, you would be it would basically cancel out any ripple effect from a black hole. The effect would be way too small to the magnitude would just be canceled out. So to even pretend that this is a thing, they have to use flat space-time to derive it and they have to use a preferred linearized approximation set to even to not even accidentally override the effects to begin with. And Crothers breaks all that down in his paper. There'll be a link in the description. We went over it in detail last week. I'm just kind of recapping it. It's math heavy or whatever, so it's just kind of going over the equations and talking about that relationship with the flat space. It just shows that the flat space-time metric that they try to use is the preferred one, and the curved one wouldn't work because the magnitude of which they claim to be measuring doesn't exist. So anyway, that covariant relationship where it would have to be derivable in both both coordinate systems to be substantiated in the mythology of Einstein's covariance. The fact that it's not covariant breaks it's not even, it couldn't possibly be real in their framework, right? It's literally just some stuff that they want to believe in through confirmation bias, so they don't question it. And when Crothers questioned it and pointed it out, his career got ended. So, and nobody ever refutes what he says about the covariance violation, right? He's just some kook. He's just some crazy kook. So with that said, I'll turn it over to Toby now, who's going to break down in depth with an analysis of what it is that they claim to be measuring.
Excellent. Give me just 1 second. Let me go ahead and set up. Where is what's the key to present in PowerPoint again?
Control Shift F5 maybe, or Control F5, something like that.
Control F5. Nope.
Hold on.
Let's look for it.
It's
Got it, I think. Or this is reading view. This will work.
Shift F5. It'll make it full screen. Is that what you want?
You're a genius. Thank you, sir.
Nice. Yep.
So
All right.
Go ahead and share this. All right. So give you guys all a second to pop in here. So yeah, when they're saying they're measuring these things, back in the day with the early interferometers, with Michelson-Morley and with Miller and stuff, they were measuring fringe shifts. They were they were essentially doing math, calculating the distance, and then using a regression model to look at to essentially derive the velocity at which the relative motion was being calculated. But when you're just trying to detect aberrations within the light signal, which would be what these gravitational waves are, there's like this whole concept of what are you really detecting? How do you detect something so minuscule? Like this thing could probably pick up a dog barking, a mile away or something. That's how sensitive they claim it to be. So how do you detect that? How do you get through this? How do you look at this data? How do you extrapolate it to find something meaningful, or at least what they would say is meaningful? Well, let me introduce you to a convolutional neural network, which is a convolutional approach to abstract gravity waves using advanced matched filtering and dynamic normalization layering. So here's their detections, right? These some Fourier transforms here. You've got an analysis here of Virgo and LIGO showing this correlation. And then you've got this here. They've got, you may kind of, if you're like me, maybe wondering like, well, where's the real signal here? I see all this analysis. What's the real signal? Well, the best way to get a LIGO signal, to find a gravitational wave, is to use a convolutional neural network as presented here. And let's just go ahead and read from this. To enhance the scope of this emergent science, we propose the use of deep convolutional neural networks for the detection and characterization of gravitational wave signals in real time. This method, deep filtering, was initially demonstrated using simulated LIGO noise. In this article, we present the extension of deep filtering using real data from the first observing run of LIGO for both detection and parameter estimation of gravitational waves from binary black hole mergers with continuous data streams from multiple LIGO detectors. We show for the first time that machine learning can detect and estimate the true parameters of a real gravitational wave event observed by LIGO. Deep filtering is far more computationally efficient than matched filtering, because just in case you thought, oh, maybe they just started using all this crazy stuff. No, they've been using matched filtering the whole time. It's just, very network heavy, very computational, very compute heavy. But so yeah, they call it noise. And the convolutional neural network enables the detection of new classes of gravitational wave sources that may go unnoticed with existing detection algorithms. Thank goodness. So what is deep filtering? What is a CNN? Deep filtering consists of 2 steps. A classifier CNN is first applied to the data stream. The classifier returns the probability of a presence of a signal. And if the classifier detects a signal, a predictor CNN is applied to the input to determine, or a predictor CNN is applied to the input to determine the parameters such as masses. In a multi-detector scenario, the CNNs may be applied separately to each data stream and coincide with detections with similar parameters can be enforced. So they have a CNN before it even goes into the CNN. I know we haven't even discussed what a CNN is exactly yet. It's a machine learning network that they use to find data within noise. They program their machine learning, a lot of their algorithms. There's a few different tools that they use. They use an open source Einstein toolkit. I thought it was kind of funny that it's called the Einstein toolkit. It's like how to transform your data into whatever relativistic equation you want it to match. So let's talk about the layers of a convolutional neural network. First of all, you've got layer 1, the input layer. You're just receiving your input image data. It's a matrix of pixel values, essentially, and they call it noise. And after you go through the input layer, you hit your first level of batch normalizations. And what those do is essentially normalize the data, which means to essentially compress it down, right? So that it can not overload the network as it goes into the next layer. Because every time it goes through one of these layers, it essentially does like a crap load of computation and extrapolates a crap load of data from running algorithms on the noise that it had received. So the noise value goes up at each layer basically at the end of it, and then they run a batch normalization at the end of each layer essentially to bring the amount of data to be analyzed in the next layer down. So anyways, that's layer 1, the input layer. Then we go into the convolutional layer. So this is core to the neural network. And basically, essentially how it works is that neurons, quote unquote, which I don't like that word, because all it really is essentially weighted points of logic. But weighted points of logic filter the data, extrapolating it across multiple dimensions. So think of taking a Microsoft Paint file, like a bitmap file, and really it's a bunch of ones and zeros, right? If you were to look at the data itself. But then you could take those ones and zeros and extrapolate them across, you could run them through binary, or you could run them, you could flip the whole image. There's a bunch of different ways you could interpret that data, and you could run it through different dimensionalities. But in any case, they use matrices of weighted algorithms to basically iterate through the data. And then they use machine learning to produce feature maps as it iterates through the data. And so when you get to the next layer, the ReLU layer, which is also known, aka the activation layer, I know it's a lot of people's favorites out there, it applies rectified linear activation. And the layer is element wise, and it uses machine learning to add nonlinearity to elements to allow for more complex pattern recognition. So I thought this one was going back, still had connections to previous layers, but it does not. So essentially, it's able to discern elements, quote unquote, from the data it's received from the previous layer, the convolutional layer, and then it basically accentuates those elements, right? Which allows you to recognize more. If the element was not going to be recognized in your next layer, well, good thing you went through the ReLU layer, because you added some nonlinearity to allow it to be matched to a more complex pattern recognition. You wouldn't want to miss your general relativistic prediction because you didn't add enough nonlinearity to your elements. So the next layer we go into is the pooling layer. And this uses previous classifiers and machine learning to reduce dimensions of the data and to add filter weighting to subsequent layers, right? So we've gone through all these subsequent layers. We just added the nonlinearity. We're element-wise. Well, the pooling layer knows about all of that stuff. It goes back through everything, and it reduces dimensions of the data and adds filter weighting. So basically, it's gonna look at the elements that we're trying to find, the stuff that we added the nonlinearity to, and it's gonna look at the weighting that's been presented from the convolutional layer, and it's going to use those to essentially reduce dimensions to match against the elements, and then add filter weighting to the subsequent layers. So based on the ReLU layer, we can then take the weighting that we got in the convolutional layer and further accentuate that based on what we concluded and decided we were going to do with the data in the ReLU layer. So, and that's done through two different methods. They use max pooling, which reduces that's done by reducing the upper limits of the data. And then there's also average pooling, where it just averages and reduces. It reduces everything by just averaging it all down together. So that's what you do in the pooling layer. And don't forget, we already went through one of these before we even got into this one, just to make sure that it was maybe a signal. So once we figured out, oh, maybe this is a signal, we threw it through here. So now we're in layer 5, and we're fully connected now. So this applies machine learning to analyze the machine learning interpretations from the previous layers, which is kind of what we did a little bit of in the pooling layer, right? But we just did the max and average pooling. But now we're going to use those connections to do weight classifications. And that's going to be excellent. And don't forget, we'll do some more normalization after all this, because that's going to be a lot of weight classifications. And then we'll go to, finally, the output layer. I don't know why it says output connected, but it should say output layer. In any case, as many neurons as there are classes to predict, which means, like I said, the neurons are just weighted points of logic, essentially. And there's as many of those as there are classes from the previous layers. And it uses what's called softmax activation function to output a probability distribution for classifications, which then they can use further analysis on those classifications after the fact to find what they're looking for. So there you go. That's how they're going to get you to your gravitational wave. Some people thought, I think this is just a little bit much. Maybe.
So I have a question, Toby.
Yeah.
If you were going to define a neural network to manufacture fake data from a bunch of noise, would you do it differently than that, or would you do exactly that?
This would be a good way to do it, probably.
You think, right? I think they pretty much nailed the process of how to manufacture what I want from nothing into an algorithmic fucking gem, right? They whittled it down to just the finer points.
Dude, they store 1,000 terabytes of data a day. And it's just extrapolating all of this and running it through these networks for no reason other than to pretend that general relativity is a real thing.
That's what it comes down to. Holy cow.
So yeah, convolution. So convolutional neural networks, just to be clear, are not just used for this. They are used in other radio wave detection stuff. I think they're maybe using some certain types of radiology analysis. But here's what this paper is saying, that this is Timothy Gebhard, Nikki Kilbertus, Ian Harry, and Bernard Schulphoff from the Planck Institute. And they're saying that convolutional neural networks alone cannot be used to claim a statistically significant gravitational wave detection. And they say, finally, we sound a note of caution by constructing adversarial examples which showcase interesting failure modes of our model, where inputs with no visible resemblance to real gravitational wave signals are identified as such by the network with high confidence. No, they wouldn't convolute the wrong thing. Well, maybe they overfitted it. It's not a big deal. We probably detected one anyways. Deep learning systems are known to pick up unintentional quirks in the training data, which can correlate with the labels. This can result in an undesirable behavior called overfitting, where a classifier learns to perform well on training data, but fails on new examples in the real application. In particular, the final fully connected layers, we love those, can learn location-sensitive features. A network containing fully connected layers may focus exclusively on high-amplitude, high-frequency oscillations in this region, ignoring other parts of the input. So, real quick, I'm going to go back. when we were on this frame here and we were looking at all this data, like this here, like, oh, Virgo and LIGO correlated. Wow, how can you argue with that? Well, let's just remember that they literally can zoom in and extrapolate and pull things out. And they actually don't even, skipping ahead a little bit here, but maybe I didn't get it in here, but they don't even have to match the perfect time. Like, they literally allow us a window of time differential between Virgo and LIGO. So basically, they can extrapolate the data out across multiple dimensions, make it bigger or smaller. We saw how they reduce and add dimensionality, and they can pick whatever dimension they want. And then, you know, so like to find a correlation from one to the other within a time window that's not even consistent with the relativistic predictions, and then to say that that was just, you know, what happened, and it's a bit weak, I would say, on the evidence side.
Wait, they're covariantly scaling the size of this whole network back and forth to and fro at willy-nilly to match whatever prediction that they want. That's crazy, but also very useful.
Yeah, and about what you'd expect from them, right? And so this guy, Dongfang from China, this guy wrote a paper, and I'm just going to read through the highlights here because I think he makes some great points. He says, the true conclusions of numerical calculation and image analysis of GW150914 signal wave. There is an irreconcilable difference between the results of the generalized relativistic frequency equation of the gravitational wave. Generalized relativistic frequency equation of the gravitational wave constructs a nonlinear equation group about the mass of wave source. The computer image solution shows that the equation group has no GW10914 signal wave solution. The numerical relativistic waveform of the GW150914 signal wave deviates too far from the original waveform, actually. Other LIGO signal waveforms do not have obvious characteristics of gravitational frequency variation of spiral binary stars and lack precise data, so they cannot be used for numerical analysis and image solution. Therefore, LIGO signals represented by GW50914 signal do not support the relativistic gravitational wave frequency equation. Detailed observation data can give an accurate answer. And then he just concludes here saying, the strict proof of the conclusion requires that the numerical analysis results of observation data with high accuracy conform to the theoretical... Oh, so he's saying that literally they're conforming it to what they expect. And the generalized quantization characteristics, I don't know why I can't say that word tonight, pardon me, signal contain a new scientific theory. He's literally saying, like, you guys are putting a new scientific theory forward to even try and make this make sense. Like, it's not, just like Crothers was saying, this is not what's predicted with relativity. Perhaps gravitational waves of spiral binaries that will be discovered in the future have the same general quantization law, and the gravitation theory will be developed and perfected. So that's the closing of this presentation about the convolutional neural networks. And basically, it's just hilarious. He's saying, like, yeah, if you guys want to go ahead and start saying that this is what we're finding, that this is all accurate and all real, then cool, I guess we can start a whole new theory.
And then he got fired and no one ever heard from him again or whatever, so. Like, got memory hold after that. Wow, man. When you look at all that together all at once, it's quite a story.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, I feel reassured that special and general relativity are completely adequate in their explanation of the universe around me. And now I was doubting it a little, but I feel reassured. So thank you, Toby.
That's what I'm here for.
But honestly, no one's going to understand the inner backings of what you just went through. And your background kind of helps you understand that and then convey it to us in a way that we understand, because you're able to see how retarded it is, but not everyone is. So you're really destroying the barrier of retardation for the rest of the world for us. So thank you.
Barrier of retardation.
What Shane said, I agree.
They drape it in this mathematical garb, kind of like, you know, Tesla said about Einstein and his relativistic nonsense. And they put all this fancy math, and they put this powdered sugar on this turd. So it's like super nice and pretty, but when you get up close to it, it's still a fucking turd, right?
Yeah, they did a good job of giving the high priest
convoluting.
Oh, that too. I was just gonna say they did a good job of giving the high priests the exclusive understanding of the theories without having to like actually make any sense of it.
We'll just violate the tenets that we put forth back every which way. Won't tell anyone. Sure, it does this. Say, and we look, everything works. Relativity's real. Well, no, you changed all parameters, invented a whole variable, throw it a different additional vector that had nothing to do. Like, okay, if that's what you want to do.
I'm gonna tell my bank that I used a convolutional neural network to find $1 million they had missed.
Well, I think it's the funniest part is when people like try to argue LIGO to you or anyone. All they say is that they use concrete that shows curvature. They don't address any of the.
They called up their local construction company, and they were like, "Yo, need you to pour this concrete in such a way that it accounts for a deflection of the vertical."
Which, by the way,
that implies though, yeah.
Does it cost extra? Like, how much extra is it if I do or don't want to include the curvature calculations?
So I found out. So if you just want regular level, like, flat earth level, super cheap, but you're not going to be up to code with the state, and the state requires you to be perpendicular with the geoid. So if you want to be perpendicular with the geoid, you got to get a guy out there who's insured, and take the measurements and all that.
Like, so the people who don't go that route, though, in like 200 years, when the pole shifts and the geographic thing rotates under from the axial rotation, your house is going to be fucked. So I don't know what you guys are doing.
Yeah. See, that's the problem with just going with regular down. Like, you run into those, you become an insurance liability essentially for your neighbors. Get right with your geoid, boys.
And for the people talking about cement, we would probably follow up with your interpretation of the underlying neural network with which they used to detect data from noise, but you won't know what that means.
Yeah. All right. So I think, is there any questions, comments, concerns, or anything?
We should build our own network, and then we'll detect signs of flatness throughout the galaxy and see how they make of that.
Well, it turns out that's already a problem.
Whoops, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, it's already super flat and they don't have enough energy to make it round. But, one day there might be enough energy. They just have to find the right equation or constant. It's really all about the coefficients, I found, Shane.
Yeah, it's universal changing laws of nature that they whip and forth, back and forth, and exchange with each other. Kind of crazy.
It's interesting when you look at the timeline. The first time they detected anything, it ended up being after maintenance, and it was a sample data, and they kind of messed up by telling everyone it was real, and then we got our wires crossed, that was sample data. And then there was like another one, and you get like one or two here or there trickle out, and then next thing you know, in 2024 you go and look it up, and it's like, oh, they say they detected 90 of them a few years ago. It's almost like as you tune your convolutional neural network, it gets easier and easier to find gravitational waves.
Yeah, it's exactly it's think about how they train the what is it, the CAPTCHA bots or whatever, right? Using all the using humans to actually decipher what the words are to train the neural network so that it could learn how to read, because otherwise it would have no reference to what the words are. So they have no measurement of a gravitational wave, no physical representation of it, nothing to substantiate it, just a mathematical extrapolation of what it could possibly look like after they've run it through about, 5 different layers of convolutional.
I mean, it's almost like an infinite number of layers, right? Because it does it twice, and every time you hit a new layer, it can loop back to the other layer and make adjustments.
It's just infinitely cycling back to whatever it needs to be, to the point where they can't even tell if it's real or not. Where, I don't know, did we cover where they got with the blind injection?
I mentioned it. I've mentioned it a couple times, but we didn't really cover it.
Yeah, so at one of their quote unquote detections, they were actually, I'll just pull it up real quick, see if I can pull it up. We can read it directly. Actually, I did a presentation on it. It's in that. We'll pull it off of that instead.
I like to watch this video every time we discuss LIGO, the 8-second one of the celebratory.
Yeah, Toby, can you cue that up to play us out?
Yeah, absolutely.
We did it. All right. So let's see here. I'm going to pull this up real quick. What were we talking about? LIGO and something.
Them getting got.
Oh, right. Where is it at? I think I have it here. Did I not include it in this one? Sick. All right. Give me 1 second.
I'm also trying to find when those guys got interviewed.
Injection. Yeah, right here. All right. So anyway, they were about to. They got a detection for a gravitational wave, man. And they were like, "Oh no way, is it real? Like we don't know." So they did an analysis on it. They spent a couple of months on it, and then they were about to publish all of their findings and analysis on it and go live and say, "Hey boys, we detected a gravitational wave." And then the director stepped forward and said, "Hey, so about that gravitational wave, that was a blind injection to see if you guys could tell the difference between a real gravitational wave and a blind injection, or like, a false positive. So we're going to go ahead and cancel that press conference, but we'll keep the systems operational, and thanks for your contributions. Everyone return to work tomorrow. Same thing. And, if we get another detection, you guys see if you can figure that one out." So after they told everyone that, sent them home, they shortly after that, they got another detection, and Toby will play out the press announcement of the first successful detection of a gravitational wave during maintenance, when the software used to detect false positives was not operational, and when so that's cool.
Well,
Go
yeah,
ahead and
actually,
play us out,
before we even
Toby.
play that, I'm gonna show the video of the guy. Well, actually, we'll play that first, and then I'll also.
Yeah. I was just looking at it, dude. That's perfect. You can see that.
Let's.
Dismissed.
Well, that's cool, man. They could just find a gravitational wave wherever they look for it.
All right. Let me know when you guys are ready.
Yep.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have detected gravitational waves. We did it.
All right. I love it every time. I love it. Look at the applause. Thunderous. Oh, I love it.
Let's go to my favorite
Filled with
comment.
patriotism right now.
My favorite comment.
Shout out to the boys.
I have no clue what that means, but I'm hype AF right now.
That's exactly the fucking sentiment. Yes.
And then the response, it means job security for physicists. Shout out at Hexer1822 and at SS Goku88.
Oh, dude, that's hilarious.
But yeah, so that's them announcing it. But then look at this guy. This guy worked at LIGO, and I'll put on captions, and it's 9 minutes. Let's just listen for like 5 minutes or so here.
It's hard to overstate how anomalous this is. Sunday night, at both places, people are working on the machines. And it's like here, there's some stuff going on. Like you look down here, there's just some people whittling away, who knows what they're doing. Sunday night, around midnight basically, at both places, both teams, without talking to each other, are like, well, we're tired, let's go home. And so headed back in, they go through the control room like we have back here, and they sit down for probably like 20, 30 minutes, and they readjust the controls on the system to put it back into a mode where it's ready for observation. And then they go home. And probably before they even arrived at home, that signal came through Louisiana and then Washington. And what's the chances of that? They could easily have just worked for another half hour, and then we wouldn't have had anything. It's not just that it was really anomalous that we found something in the first hour, but how strong it was. We've now looked at the data for the next several months, from then until January. There's nothing in the data that loud.
Can you tell me about how you first realized that LIGO may have detected gravitational waves?
I think I was traveling on that day, so I didn't know. And I came back here, I believe, on the day after. And I was wandering around in the building, and people were sort of whispering and looking over their shoulders about, you didn't want to spill it. So they were saying, did you hear? Did you hear? Or have you seen it? What do you think? And I said, I don't even know what you're talking about. And they said, yeah, it's like there's an event. It looks really real. And I was like, whatever. I don't have time for this nonsense. I got things to do, man. And
why weren't you more interested? Like, this could be it, right? You've been working, what, like a decade to try to find this? 2 decades?
2 decades.
And you didn't want to say, like, oh, I'll have a look at least.
No. We had just turned the detectors on barely, and I was ready to wait for some months or 6 months. I don't know. I could. We were going to take data for 3 or 4 months, and I thought, yeah, maybe in a month or two something will pop up, but it'll be really tiny, and we won't find it. And then maybe we'll spend another 6 months combing through the data and developing algorithms to eventually find it. But no way would it be like, bloop, you turn it on and immediately there's a signal, which is what people were saying. So I said, look, just settle down a little bit. You don't understand how the world works. It's not like this. You turn on your device and there's some burps and glitches, and it's a kind of growing pains at the beginning. And I said, when you've been around as long as I have, you'll understand how complicated it is, you young people. So just go back about your business, and nothing to see here. And that's all. And then it just wouldn't die. Everyone was still looking at it. And I just didn't bother to look at it for another week, probably, because it just seemed like there's always fake events.
Think about
right?
being jaded with reality. Like, this whole thing is fake, so I had trouble being excited.
I downloaded the data and I looked at it and I pressed a lot of plots.
You say they're always fake, Toby?
Did you see what? Did you hear what he just said? How did you convince yourself it was real? Look at this.
And then it just wouldn't die. Everyone was still looking at it, and I just didn't bother to look at it for another week, probably, because it just seemed like there's always fake events, right? And
but how did you eventually convince yourself that it was real?
I downloaded the data and I looked at it and I pressed a lot of plots, and then when I looked at it, it just seemed like there's no bells and whistles to it. It's 2 black holes which aren't spinning a lot, and they merge together, and it swoops up in frequency and chirps the right way.
Sky demon,
and then when it merges, there's no craziness.
Did he say he smoked a lot of pot?
And then it settles down, and the final black hole's not spinning. So. It just seemed like something that you would just get if you were trying to fake a signal. That seemed like a fine fake signal to make. And the peak frequency of that signal, there's a lot of astonishing things. The peak frequency of that signal happens to be at the frequency where our detector is the most sensitive. What's the chances that nature would engineer a signal right in our sweet spot, right?
I've never seen this, but
the
not very
easiest
good, buddy,
thing
I
to
would say.
calculate is black hole.
I just think the whole thing is just bizarre. Like, they're wearing the laser goggles the whole time. Like, why are they gonna go stick their face in the tube? Like, I don't understand. And like the pictures in the background, cool, like it's just like pictures of parts of the observatory or something. Like, it's just like, I don't understand how those are functional.
Were they aware this guy was going to talk to the public? Because I think he kind of did his own thing. This was not their PR department in charge of this guy.
Yeah, for sure. This guy probably got a talking to after this.
He's like, yeah, there's so much fakery that I can't really tell. And honestly, if we were gonna fake it, that's the specific fakery range where we should fake it, because that's where most. What are the odds of Mother Nature faking a gravitational wave just like that for us? Like, oh, so close to the answer, bro.
Yeah, so I posted the full video in the chat, and I'll also put it in the description of this one. But if anyone's interested in this, I think it's a very odd interview and worth checking out.
It is. I'd like to work there. I mean, the guy gives me the idea of like he's just there for the paycheck, and the paycheck is easy coming. I mean, for 2 decades he hasn't gotten anything, and like what?
Fully expected to do this forever and just have this job, and now that we have like this fake wave. I got to do work, and it's just fucking not my style, you know.
It's like the one guy at the office that knows it's BS. Everyone's all super stoked, bro. Have you checked out this new gravity wave? He's like, oh my dude, I've been working here 20 years. I actually built the infrastructure to this bad boy. I actually designed the blind injection algorithm that's just sensitive enough to hit the sweet spot of our sensor. What are the odds of that? You know what I'm saying? But anyway, like, dude.
What a good find. That kind of sells the whole story, I think. Nice, pretty bow on it. Package it up, print, sell.
Yeah, does anyone else have any questions or thoughts or just anything else before we wrap up? Kind of open everything up here for a little bit, if anyone wants to pitch in.
I'm kind of curious, like when Alan was doing his presentation there really quickly, you kind of showed how the interferometry was, how they curved it up to follow the curve, or curved it down. So it's not a straight, it's curved, right?
That was someone following the geodesic path projected by Google Earth on an absolutely straight line, sir. That's how that occurred.
Oh.
Yep.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Like in reality, it's level AF, but like on the geoid, it's perpendicular to the gravitational potential of the geoid, which has a 8 inches per mile square relationship. So they had to pour the concrete in a special way to account for a 1 to 4 meter deviation that may or may not exist based on which star map you're aligned with. So, it's one of those things.
That's the real answer with the Steelman of how they determine that. But really, it just comes down to the longitude and latitude that they're measuring on is, inherently spheroidal. So, like, Google Earth is a sphere guy. So if you're doing distance comparisons, you're gonna get a geodesic great arc. There's no way around it. And when you're measuring curvature on a thing that's round, like, you're gonna get the required amount of curvature. So I don't know why people would present that as evidence in the first place. It just shows a sufficient lack of understanding of where the principles and the parameters come from in the first place.
Indubitably. All right, I think we'll end on that.
Yeah, so nice job, LIGO. Keep cranking out those gravity waves.
We'll be watching Beta Breath all across the world.
Yo, shout out to that guy with the goggles that gave that interview, man. I hope you find what you're looking for, brother. Peace.
Come talk to us, bro. You'd have a home with us. I feel like we get along.
Yo, I'm going to tokenize, by the way, everybody. Hit me up on one of those NFT websites. I'm going to tokenize every single gravitational wave detection. And we're going to start getting some trading going. And yeah.
That's only funny to 6 people now, though.
We're gonna trade Einstein gravitational wave NFTs. Very nice.
One for every GW180283 or whatever.
Get your own LIGO minted GWS 83 geoid perpendicular. All right, I'm signing off. Have a good night.
Take care, y'all.